Hello, and welcome to the Race, Wealth, and Health Podcast, a podcast that serves to educate and empower while we explore the intersections of social justice, economic empowerment, and holistic well-being within communities of color. I am your host, Dr. Joycelyn Morris, and I invite you to join me as we dive deep into the crucial topics that shape our lives, challenge the status quo, and strive for a more equitable future for all. Well, hello. Welcome to another episode of Race, Wealth, and Health. So excited to have with me today Mark Payne. And he's coming to speak with us about all the things that we need to think about, or things that we need to be thinking about when it comes to our fitness and our health journey. And we'll discuss some of the myths that typically come up and tips around those things. And so, Mark, I just want to thank you for joining me today.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. I'm super excited.
Yes. So, by way of introduction, so Mark Payne is a fitness and health coach. I actually had the opportunity to meet Mark and become acquainted at a local gym that I went to. So he's a fitness and health coach there. And so I think we just started chatting. Maybe it's because I did the challenge. That's actually when we actually met and started talking, right? So I did a 60-day challenge, and Mark was my person to keep me accountable, create a little bit of an overview for me. And that's how we started to connect. But given my, general personal commitment and passion around health and fitness, I thought it'd be really great to have you on. So I'm so excited because I think that there's often so much information out there now, right? Like there's so much content, especially when we think about social media and everybody's promoting themselves, creating content, being a fitness and or nutritional guru, if you will, and doing all types of things. Like I'm sure you've seen the videos where people are doing some very interesting exercises on equipment that it's like, you might hurt yourself, but okay, right? Like all under the auspice of content creation. So I'm really excited to have you with your expertise and experience telling us the real deal and debunking some of the myths I think that exist out there. So Mark, if you wouldn't mind just kind of starting with a little bit more of your background, how you got into this work and why you're passionate about health and fitness.
Sure. So I'm kind of like a late bloomer in life. I played sports, but they weren't anything organized past high school. So high school, dabbled in the gym, lifted a weight here and there, but it really came down to when I joined the military. So I joined the Navy, and everybody's working out. I go on a deployment early in my career, and we're ordering all this stuff from all the supplement shops and all this cool stuff and lifting weights. And then it just kind of became me after that when I arrived back home. So I started working for a supplement company, just started to do some just like offline studying myself, literally supplement for supplement, like seeing what they do, helping a few individuals just through conversation and then what I knew because I wasn't certified in anything. Took a vacation to Florida, fell in love with it, never came back, started working at a gym, met a lot of really smart people in my journey over the past almost 10 years. And that's where I test most of my knowledge to is the people that have done it 30 years way before me and then taking myself through it and then taking clients through it as well too. So a lot of that experience has really, really helped me be successful personally, obviously, but along with clients and having a very high retention rate, which is what I would call a successful career, more so than having a lot of clients unless you're turning them over with results. So just the people that I do get, I tend to hold on to, and then they get their results and they're very happy with it. And then we just maintain through simple habits. So this is where I'm at.
Awesome. And are there particular areas that you focus on in terms of your coaching?
Yes, I'm just trying to get everybody healthy. If I can get you healthy, then you can do whatever you want. But I think
Mhm.
health per se is kind of perceived in different ways, whether you are a marathon runner and you're the healthiest, or whether you're a strong man and you're the healthiest, or whether you're an athlete and you're the healthiest. I think we all just have to find our personal health, but there are some objective measurements that are very generalized to certain, demographic of people, if you will. So if I can hit those markers, then I in turn know that you're healthy. Then we can focus on the tertiary goals of said muscle gain, weight loss, trying to get around any other type of challenge, if you will. So we just get them healthy first.
I love it. And so obviously this podcast when we're talking is race, wealth, and health. And so I'm
Hmm.
curious for you, like what comes up when you think about the intersection of health and wealth?
I think they're as intertwined as all of our however many senses that we have. I think there's five of them. So I think they all just play on each other. You really can't have the full spectrum of one without having some of the others as well too. I think whomever you are, myself and yourself included, I can have more focus on one of those areas versus the other. But at the end of the day, I'm still nurturing them all, and I'm trying to bring them up to whatever their optimal levels are. Um, so it does give you a sense of wealth, if you will. Health does, and so does monetary wealth. So does spiritual wealth. So does relationship wealth, or however you have it, because we're just rich in so many different ways. So if we're just talking about health, let's be abundantly rich. Let's have the best credit cards out there, and get the best loan rates and the lowest interest rates, because when you eat your food and when you work out, you get an immediate ROI. So
Absolutely.
that's what it is for me, really, is really just understanding that it is a type of wealth, and you just want to get as much as you can out of it, because we're doing it every day. You're eating every day, you're drinking water every day, you're moving in some way every day. So why not make it optimal? Like if I'm drinking 24 ounces of water a day and 30 can make things work a little bit better, then that's your choice after that. That's what I always tell people.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I just want to know for our listeners, when I going back to how we specifically met, I mean, we'd see each other in the gym, but once I signed up to do the 60-day challenge and we sat down and we talked about what I was currently doing and what my fitness goals were and that sort of thing. One of the things that stood out for me in terms of choosing to work with you was your notation around nutrition as well. So there's a lot of science that talks about nutrition is the key component to achieving optimal health, certainly when it comes to weight loss, etc. Want to get your start there. I want to get your thoughts on that, like myth or fact in terms of the importance of nutrition.
I mean, fact, I wouldn't be, doing what I'm doing if I said that. It just really comes down to, I guess, the percentage of effort that you want to be able to give it to be able to
Mm,
get the most out of it. And this is kind of like a script that I always use. Are you ready, willing, and able to be able to do what we're talking about? So, I need to stop eating fast food. Am I ready? Okay, cool. Am I willing? Yes, I am willing. Am I able? Sure, I don't have to go. So the ready is really, so then we just dig into that. But after we get past the ready, willing, and able, I mean, you're pretty much good to go. I think it's just more a sense of understanding the basics of where we need to be with nutrition, and how we can cleanse every day, if you will, and we don't necessarily need this cleanse or this flush or that flush. And then just context behind certain fruits and vegetables too. We all did the apple cider vinegar kick. Everybody was drinking that stuff, burning their throats and stripping the enamel off their teeth. And then lemons. I mean, those have been around for ages. So I can say that a lemon cleanses you, and someone else can say that the acidity of the lemon helps out your digestive juices inside of your stomach. And then someone else can say that it help flushes out the toxins. And at the end of the day, the context behind that lemon probably doesn't necessarily matter, as so much as you understanding that we place it in at this point for this specific reason. Meaning, I use the lemon in the morning for this. I put the lemon on my meat for this. I put the lemon in my tea for this. This lemon has different applications. So what I'm really doing is giving you more knowledge about simple things that we have, and understanding that it's kind of like a Swiss Army knife, this lemon. It can benefit you in so many different ways, and
mm.
all foods are like that. It just depends on our relationship with them, our history, and our habits and rituals that are tied with that as well too.
Yeah, great point. I actually wanted to touch on one of the things that you mentioned about I believe you said ready, willing, and able, right? And so the example you used was fast food. And so I follow a few nutritionists online. And so, which has actually been good, but there's often, and it changes every so many years, right? Like what's foods that are good for you versus foods that are
Mhm.
bad for you versus clean foods or dirty food. And so all of that, and maybe in general, I'd imagine a diet fully of fast food is not healthy for anyone. But what's your take on this idea of good versus bad food versus
Hmm.
understanding how to use the food and when to incorporate it? And is it a matter of good versus bad, or is it a matter of like quantity and consumption and thought process around
Hmm.
why we're consuming certain foods?
Hmm. I mean, you literally walked me into one of the best points is the relationship with it. Like when I say burger, what do you think about? When I say cardio, are you like, oh man? When I say lifting weights, are you like, yes? When I say hit class, are you like, oh yeah? When I say spin, are you like, man, no. So it really comes down to the relationship with it. So all food is beautiful. Obviously, if I don't like something, I don't like it, but I'm not sitting over here eating my cake feeling a certain type of way. The type of way that I'm feeling is those feel good chemicals, let's just say that. And they're making me
Right.
feel very nice inside and out. I like what my palate is doing. My body has this butterfly kind of goosebumpy feeling. I mean, who says that's bad? So I, I think if we all have a little bit of self accountability and just more so, and I'm not going to say eat like adults because adults can do whatever they want. And that's not where we're going with this conversation because you're an adult, you can do whatever you want. I just think that we need to understand where the food comes from, right? And try to get as close to that source as possible. No pun intended to any of my people. I love my vegans. I love my keto. I love my carnivores. I love it all because I eat all of those things with you all. So whenever someone comes from the vegan world, I say let's keep it as natural as possible. Whenever someone comes from the keto world, I say keep it as natural as possible. So I'm really trying to eat as close to that food source as possible and have a diversity of nutrients so that I can make sure that I have an adequate amount of vitamins and minerals. But if I'm not in a healthy spot, then those vitamins and minerals just aren't doing as much as they can. And then that healthy spot would more so for general population all the way across the board is with over 12,000 hours of 12 to 15,000 hours of personal training in the past 7 or 8 years. Most of it is stress induced.
Mm-hmm.
Most of it is, and different stresses, stresses that we don't know, stresses that we do know, stresses that we understand, and stresses that we don't understand. It could be not doing enough or doing too much. Now, that doesn't make any sense. How can I be stressed out if I'm not doing enough? And how can I be stressed out if I'm doing too much? Well, that makes sense, but how can I be stressed out if I'm not doing anything? So once we understand where the body should be and what stress is and how your body perceives it and how we can feed into that or how we can kind of stay away from that, then we get a better understanding of things like blood sugar control and then blood pressure and then HRV and resting heart rate versus an exercise heart rate. Where should my heart rate be? What does that
Yeah.
mean? So that that's where that little rabbit hole of good or bad. Okay, cool. It depends on how you use it. I mean, you
Right.
can water. We all need it. If you drink too much, I don't know what the term is, but you can drown yourself. And so with the ready, willing, and able, the next thing that was taught to me is the dose versus the prescription. It's
Mm.
not about, has really nothing to do with the prescription because everyone has prescriptions out here, meaning you can go to the grocery store and get one pancake or 70 pancakes, or you can get two bananas or 14 bananas. So it's not the prescription so much as it is the dose. And the dose is very dependent. I am an X amount of pound, X amount of body fat versus muscle. My gene heritage is not Scottish. So I did not grow up eating the things that people do from those areas. So I have to understand those things about myself and understand the people that came before me so I can learn from that, get better, evolve. But also, as we all know, don't make the same mistakes.
Right, right. To that point, because I love where the conversation is going. One
I
of the
know,
things
my
that
bad.
it's perfect. One of the things that you mentioned was getting as close to that food source. And I don't want to lose that because I think
Mhm.
that from the point of also just even being able to give our listeners some tips, tell me a little bit more what you mean. I think I know what you mean, but tell the listeners a
Mhm.
little bit more what you mean about getting as close to that food source.
Absolutely. As close to the food source is going to be as fresh as possible. So there's three stages that I always talk about: fresh, frozen, canned. Those are pretty much how things or packaged in some way. So if we just talk about protein, protein is going to be any type of animal, if you will, and or their products, meaning eggs, milk, cheeses, they're all products of these said animals. If I can understand what types of proteins that I have and how close to the source that I can get it, I can have chicken. I can have chicken in the form of raw chicken, frozen chicken, canned chicken. Which one is going to give me the most value, the most return on my investment for how much that I am investing into this chicken. And if I were to make a choice for all of my past clients, my current clients, and future clients, it is going to be fresh. Well, I don't have time to cook it. Cool. That's something different. Now we focus on which one is more convenient so I don't increase stress. Because if I increase stress over this food and how it should be prepared, then
Hmm.
I'm working backwards. So that's why it's so context driven. It's
Yep.
not always this fresh chicken is not always the best choice. Sometimes you pop in that can and you haven't, okay, cool, that's just what we got. So as close to the source as possible. That means that sandwich meat chicken is going to be a lot more processed. That's a lot further away from the process and preservatives and sodiums. And those things are okay if I'm in a healthy spot. If I live in a very hot environment and I'm losing said electrolytes and micro minerals, but they're
Like,
absolutely South Florida, right? So then someone says that, like, oh, cool. I live in South Florida. That means I can increase my sandwich meat, but the sodium that's in sandwich meat and the sodium that you're actually losing are not the same types of sodium. That'd be
mhm.
another different type of conversation. So we talk about salt. I can salt my food, but I have high blood pressure. I don't want that increase in. So we're in a whole different world now. So I can use this salt for taste. Obviously, I can use this salt to cure. I can use this salt to help my electrolyte balance. I can actually use salt to help myself. I forgot what the word is, but basically the salivation that happens before you actually eat,
Mhm.
that actually helps the mastication or the chewing process to then
Mm.
get those digestive juices going better so that the digested food to be better digested. So if I don't have an appetite, me actually salting my food can make my mouth water, which increases digestive enzymes inside of my mouth, which helps me break that food down, which helps me get closer to the nutrients that are actually inside that food. I get that from my vegetables as well too. Fresh frozen canned, boom, fresh all day, way more fiber. We just say fiber and sugar cancel each other out. That's just how it was taught to me. Okay. And that's what I tell people up front. That's why you'll see a fiber one bar that has 10 grams of fiber, 9 grams of carbs, and only like one net carb. Like, hold up. You got 10, 9 minus negative, and I'm getting a lot of fiber. You're only getting one source of fiber. It's not a natural fiber. It is only one source, and it's in a heavy hit all by itself with no other added nutrients to increase my ROI or my return on my investment about what's going inside of my mouth. So, would I rather have a fiber one bar or would I rather have blueberries that have fiber, spinach that has fiber, whole wheat grain bread, sourdoughs, rye that have fiber, oats that have fiber versus this bar that could be a deeper conversation about satisfying crunch and or quickness of something. And then the last one, my favorite, or one of my favorites, if you will, fat. I mean, that's a really good source of energy, but it has to be a high quality source. The funny story, really quick, and then I'm
Yeah,
gonna give it
please.
right back to you.
Hmm.
So I've been home in Virginia. We had a big old family dinner. Today's Tuesday, Sunday. My mom's getting all the stuff together, and I'm trying to like make so many changes that are selfishly for me, like gluten this and cheese this, and maybe just change it just a little bit. So I grew up in the Crisco era, right? Lard, Crisco, all that, boom, throw it in the pan. It's white and
Hmm.
it's clear, and you put anything in there, it ain't gonna stick to the pan, and it's crisp up and fries good. So that's what I grew up on. So my mom proceeds to make a pound cake. I'm like, oh yes, pound cake, strawberries, whipped cream. I'm down for that. I keep my fats on me. That's how, like when I travel, I keep multiple different fats on me because I don't know what I want to cook and how I want it to taste. So I had some macadamia nut oil. I told my mom earlier, I was like, hey, can we try this, blah, blah? She was like, yeah, son, da 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 da. She in there making the cake. She already got the oil in the pan with the butter. I take the bowl, I pour the vegetable oil out, literally scrape it out the bowl, put it in a jar, put it back in that bottle, measure out a quarter of a cup of macadamia nut oil, put it in there, cake slamming. One of the best ones that she made. I'm not gonna say it's the macadamia nut oil, but then I'm explaining to her the benefits of it. Hey, mom, these types of fats versus these types of fats. And fats are where most of our toxins are located at. If I'm eating low grade fat in my lower grade food, I'm not getting a big return on my investment for my food. So that one change in that macadamia nut oil in a sweet, right? That's a bad food, but we're still implementing high quality ingredients, grass-fed butters, cage-free eggs, or regular, just better quality eggs, if you will. It's a small step and a small mindset to then could spark something else like, oh, I make this and I can do this change. and you're using walnut oil for your meats instead of olive oil for your meats. Now we're dressing with this olive oil rather than heating the olive oil up and then changing the components of it because it has now been heated, very similar to us cooking meat, breaking the meat down, however you want to say it, doesn't matter. All those fats and proteins and carbs all change structures when you cook them.
Right.
That's why you can only eat but so much cooked oatmeal. Like you ain't eating more than a shake. I bet you can probably palate it a little bit better. And it's not going to fill up in your stomach as much either because we've broken it down into a powder form and then had you digest it like that, rather than taking that oatmeal, making it bigger, and then putting it in your stomach.
Interesting. Interesting. I mean, you said a lot in terms of those oils, and we'll come
Hmm.
back to that because I don't want to because go down that
Just
rabbit
put a
hole
little,
in terms
yeah,
of
put
like
a little
what's
marker on that.
we'll put a marker on probably like a fire round towards the end on like
Hmm.
what are some good substitutions that we should be making. But
For
so when
sure.
we first did our intro call, we talked through like some myths, and I think where I want to start with, I think this is one of the biggest ones, right? So like, what is truly a measure of health? I think that what we see and what we often get, right, is the number on the scale. And maybe then it goes to BMI, which, given that this podcast is race, wealth, and health, we all know that the existing BMI and the way that that's calculated is not applicable to multiple types of cultures and just body structures, etc. And should that be what we're looking towards when we determine if we're healthy? Is being within a particular weight range and being a BMI?
Yes, subjectively, no, because you have athletes, NFL linemen, people who have been the same size their whole life, and they feel good. They have really good numbers. Now, aesthetically, that is subjective to each individual. Because
Right.
I like more ripe apples. You might not like your apples as ripe, and it's still an apple at the end of the day. So subjectively, yes, I really think it really comes down to how much body fat that we are all carrying. We all carry some different, men different than women, different races different than others. So I think if we can have more of a hold on how much fat versus muscle that I have and that
Hmm.
kind of combination of play. So if I'm 100 pounds and I have 60 pounds of muscle and 40 pounds of fat, then I just need to understand what that looks like, how I feel, and where my numbers are, where my age is with these current stats, because in 5, 7, 10, 15, they're all going to change. And it's probably not going to be any easier to keep it up, meaning those numbers, you might need a little bit more to then get the same that you did 5, 7, 8, 10 years ago. So I would say body fat before BMI, even if I didn't see your weight, meaning if I'm not looking at the person and you say body fat percentage, female, 35, body fat, 35. Female, 35, body fat, 25. Two completely different females. Now, they could be structured completely different too. So their body fats cannot look the same. She could carry it more in her hips and thighs, where this girl carries it a little bit more in her shoulders and her back. And with her structure, it looks different, if you will. But if we're just objectively talking about numbers, they both weigh the same or irrespective of their weight. It's just body fat is one of the more accurate standalone measurements, in my opinion, versus BMI.
So, what are some other indicators of health? You know, it's
Okay,
not,
cool.
yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. So for me and how I learn, it's going to be cardio health. And I think that everybody kind of understands that. Like if I want to lose some weight and I have some weight to lose, I do some cardio, I'm going to lose some weight. More than likely for an increase of activity, but also from those gains or those adaptations that we get from being in better cardiovascular shape. And those gains are tenfold, if you will. They help to regulate stress and your just natural energy. They help you to metabolize or process foods completely different as well. You can use it as an energy expenditure type of scenario, meaning I am burning this, or we could actually use it for an energy funnel as well to then allocate more calories. So that will be more so for performance based or tied to some type of specific physique goal in a very small moment, meaning let's say I'm getting some results, I'm losing some weight, gaining some muscle, and I'm going to use cardio to not put me in a deficit, even though it is, but I'm going to use it as a funnel. So inside of my cardio workout, I burn 250 calories. And because I want to push my performance, even though I am in a calorie deficit, I can then take that funnel and then allocate specific calories to then push my performance, even though I'm still in a calorie deficit. I know that sounds a little bit backwards, but I'm basically using the cardio not as a deficit in calories, but I'm using it as me doing exercise to then put calories back in to then help overall performance, but I'm still in my calorie deficit. So it's almost like people say that, oh, I burned 500 calories today. Now I am in a calorie deficit. Yes, you are, if everything else is going on. So I burned 500 calories. I am in a calorie deficit. I have already hit all of my calories for the day, right? Now I'm going to go do this cardio and I burn 500. I put 500 back in and I'm still at my loss.
Right. So when you say
Does
put
that?
500 back in, you ate
Yep, yep.
500, right?
Because I
But
was already at
right, you
zero.
were
I
already
was already.
eating in a
Mm-hmm.
caloric deficit. And
Yep,
so 'cause I want to
yep.
break this down for myself and for listeners. So you were already
Uh-huh.
eating, your example is you're already eating in a caloric deficit. So you already have that. And ideally, if you're truly at a deficit of what your maintenance weight consumption
Mm-hmm.
is, then you should be seeing some results from that. And then when you go work
Mm-hmm.
out, which puts you at a larger deficit,
Mm-hmm.
but then you will refuel from
To
that
then
workout.
still be in a deficit. And that fuel can help the next day of weights. That's why we're
Mm,
talking about cardio. So if I'm doing
okay.
cardio and I'm in a calorie deficit, I'm eating 1,500 calories. Mark, I've had all of my calories for the day, and today is my rest day. Let's just say that because rest days are probably one of the most underutilized days of all days, in my opinion,
Mhm.
because they help set up all the bigger, stronger days. So apart from that, rabbit hole, it would be more so me understanding that if I am already in a calorie deficit, there's two ways to make a deficit. I can make a deficit by eating less or working more. People
Mhm.
tend to extreme the combination of those two. So I'm going to decrease my calories and I'm going to work out more. That means I should get a double deficit. I should probably lose weight faster, possibly. If you do, it'll be short-lived just because the body's not made to do that unless you got some really good genes in what you're doing. But if we're talking about general population, you're going to lose weight for 2, 3 weeks, max, maybe a month. It's going to come to an extreme halt. So from a mental standpoint, would I rather lose 1, maybe 2 pounds a week for the next 8 to 10 weeks, or 4 pounds the first 2 weeks, and then a half a pound the rest, right? So we're just trying to keep it consistent all the way across the board. So back to that conversation, the 1,500 calorie deficit. This is my rest day. My calories have already put me inside of a deficit. I'm not supposed to be doing anything today, but I'm going to go to the gym and I'm going to take a class because it's my active rest day. I love classes. If we're just talking about cardio, we are going to use this cardio session to create an exercise deficit because we're already in a calorie deficit, but we're only doing that for today. I'm going to put you in a calorie deficit because we just did a specific amount of conditioning for X amount of minutes, no longer than 30 to 40. And then I want you to put specific calories back in. Specific calories. That means, like, let's say for you, it would be minimal protein. And I actually want a little bit more carbs. So 250, we'll do the math. We'll give you 15 grams of protein and like 40, 50 grams of carbs. I do not know if that's accurate. I'm just throwing numbers out there. Now,
Yeah.
those carbs and me replenishing my glycogen stores or giving some more glycogen and or carbs back to those already relatively low stores because I've been in a calorie deficit and my carbs have been relatively low. On this rest day, I'm gonna do a little bit extra, even though I'm in low, and then I can get some more carbs to then be able to push that leg day in 1 or 2 days, so 24 or 48 hours.
Yeah. Interesting. So that brings me to my next question. I think is a good myth that you started to touch on, which is cardio versus strength, right? Like I think
Yeah.
historically, and this is me definitely stereotyping, like typically more women do more cardio, more men focus on the strength. And of course, there's thoughts about each and what that needs to look like. So, cardio versus strength, or what your thoughts are on the combination of the two.
Most people need them both. If we're just talking about general population, if you want to lose fat or weight or gain muscle, those are the two main objectives of most individuals outside of flexibility, rehab, or post-op, pre-op, general population, lose fat and or gain muscle. So if we're only talking about those two, cardio is beneficial for both. Lifting weights is beneficial for both. At what? Those are the prescriptions. I have a prescription of cardio and I have a prescription of lifting weights. Now, what is the dose? Okay, the dose is going to be, we have a 7 day week. I work 5 days. This is GI Jane that has just walked into the gym. She's in her 30s. She's worked out before, a couple hit classes, did some personal training way back when. She knows how to move. She's just been out of it for a little bit. We are 100% getting her to understand what the most effective way for cardio is for her and how to comfortably push that, because you pushing yourself cardio wise is going to allow you to increase your ability to be able to take higher loads and tensions and stimuluses inside of your actual training sessions as well. It's much easier for you to push your heart rate doing some type of conditioning than it is you doing a back squat or in any type of exercise, because the squat is too dangerous for the body. The only danger in doing more cardio is you running out of breath, possibly past doing extreme things like passing out and heat exhaustion and dehydration. When you want to stop cardio, you just stop because you're breathing too hard, like outside of any type of pain. So she would get an adequate amount of cardio,
Hmm.
something cyclical, meaning that there's no, it is continuous in motion, and it's not strength training movements. So no lunges, burpees, box jumps, nothing like that. We're talking treadmill, elliptical, versaclimber, assault bike, row machine, not even battle ropes, because you can't do battle ropes for but so long because they wear your arms out. Kettlebell swings, you can only do but so many kettlebell swings before either your grip or your hips, or nobody, there's not a lot of people who can hinge like that for 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes and get an adequate amount of cardio. So we get her cardio base down, which is, if you want to say the health of cardio can be your VO2 max, 100%, it can, because once it gets to that place, then your body responds differently to the things that you're doing, and it's more resilient to things as far as other stressors. Like when you go out and you have X amount of fried foods or carbs mixed with alcohol and a heavy stress loaded week, when you're in better cardio shape, it could make you more resilient to that, meaning you don't take the punches the same. It's kind of like you got a bulletproof vest on, and you get to build more armor by having higher amounts of cardiovascular health, which can have a law of diminishing returns when it comes to gaining strength. So that means that if I have an athlete that is a marathon runner, they have an extremely high VO2 max and extremely low, generally speaking, HRV, which is basically kind of like heart rate variable is basically, it's kind of like a stress indicator. That's the simplest way to put it. If it's low, you chilling. If it's high, you're agitated from something. So stress at work, or you've been going through some really, really hard training and it's up there, and then you keep it up there for a little bit and then we drop it back down. So this guy has a super high VO2 max and a super low HRV. That means that
Hmm.
his heart is like, it's on chill because his VO2 max is so high. His strength is not very high because he's chilling. He is able to conserve and use energy in that form. That type of energy does not correlate to the 1 rep max. Like, it's not the same kind. So then
Yeah.
I take this power lifter or this strong dude over here whose HRV is super high because he's been training hard and he's stressed out and he's eating pizza and having beers and all this stuff, and he's moving weight. He's moving weight because he got some weight. That means he is heavier. His joints and ligaments and tendons are maybe not as healthy as they could be, but they're really, really tight. They have a lot of elasticity from all of the alcohol and the carbs and things that make those things tight, which actually makes it easier to bounce out of the bottom of a squat because you get some elastic energy from it. So it's like, oh, bro, I'm getting stronger. I'm eating all this food. I don't got good range of motion, but hey, I'm super strong. He probably doesn't have a high VO2 max because cardio takes away from the gains. Extreme, if you will, power lifter, 1 rep max, strongest dude out there. Extreme, this dude runs, he lifts a little bit. Most people fall like in the middle.
Right.
So you need a little bit of both. And it's figuring out what exercise you like, first of all, you're ready, willing, and able to do, and then understanding the benefits that are only tied to that type of exercise, because you can only get but so much from whatever you're doing out there. So if I'm only lifting weights, I can only get but so much mobility from only lifting weights. I will gain more mobility if I probably take some yoga classes and do some things that are non-weight bearing, that are
Yeah.
using my own levers, if you will, and also can't get enough adequate conditioning into my heart and not my muscles if I don't use some type of cyclical cardio choice,
Yeah.
running and or piece of equipment.
Right, right. Before we move on, I want to, for listeners, define, like, so you mentioned a couple of times a VO2 max. It sounds like that's definitely an indicator
Mhm.
of health or at least cardiovascular capacity. Tell us a little bit more about what that is and how we're able to figure that out.
So simple and plain. I don't use it a lot just because my clients are not, they don't need that. They don't need that number to understand that. We
Mm,
get really good gains because objectively, I know that if you are this age and you walk like this and this is your heart rate, okay, cool. Let's focus on this. You need this amount of minutes at this range for this amount of time. VO2 max is basically just an indication of it is how healthy that your heart is, but it's that exchange of carbon dioxide and oxygen. And it's almost like if you do it better, your number is better. If you don't do it as well, your number is not that good. And if you don't do it as well, it doesn't really matter what the number is.
mm,
You just need to get better. It does
yeah,
not matter what the number is. Like we know if you walk up a flight of stairs, you ain't got it, bro. It's okay. We know that if you're doing an exercise and you keep petering out at 10 reps, that means that maybe that specific movement or those specific muscle groups are not conditioned enough in that pattern. And that's different for every person. My X muscle versus my Y muscle, not, they don't train the same at all. I get really tired when I push, but I can pull all day. I can squat somebody's house, but that other dude can deadlift a mountain.
right.
So yeah, so figuring that out for yourself, like which
Mhm.
one of those works the best. But that VO2 max though, just understanding where you are at more so is way more important than where you should be.
Got it. Okay. Well, that's good
And
to know.
that's just a quick Google, like Google VO2 max. The test I believe is like a 12-minute run test. And if it's not a
Okay.
run, there's other modalities like bike and or elliptical, which might
Hmm.
be more heart rate based versus like the same application if you could run.
Don't forget to tune in next week as we continue the conversation with Mark Payne on health and fitness. Well, that's all for today, folks. Enjoyed the show? Be sure to like and rate the podcast. You can find the Race, Wealth, and Health podcast on multiple platforms, including Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. Be sure to subscribe and turn on your notifications so you never miss an episode. I also want to hear from you, so don't forget to connect with me on social media. You can follow the podcast on Instagram and Facebook at Race Wealth Health. By joining the online community, you'll stay updated on the latest episodes, behind the scenes insights, and engaging discussions. Share your thoughts, comments, and questions there. I appreciate your support in sharing the podcast with your friends, family, and colleagues who may also find value in these conversations. Thank you again for joining me on this journey. Until next time, take care, stay informed, and keep up the good fight for equality.